Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. This video is going to feel a little strange to you guys because one, it's strange to me. So I think this happens in any field. I don't think it's just strictly for racing. There's always a time in whatever career you're in where you're like, wow, that's strange. I hadn't seen that before. That is not at all what I expected. And how did that happen? This is one of those stories. So initially I thought, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to do a video that's going to be great, you know? And it's one of my most ones I've always talked about, and I thought I'll do a video, and this just happened to happen. Because what happened was the customer had sent in these heads instead of 821s, and he'd had someone port them, just a backyard porter. And he had ported them, but he didn't do the valve job. And I had been preaching forever that the valve job makes more of a flow difference than even the port work. So I thought, well, this is going to be a great video. I'm going to show you guys, look, this is all of his port work. Look how much change the valve job makes, which I will get to in a minute, and you'll get to see those numbers. But that's not at all what ended up happening. So it really, yeah, it was strange. So here's what happened. I start cutting the valve job on these heads. And the reason for cutting the valve job, period, which you're going to see here in a second anyway, is the valve job, one, had chatter, and two, the valves were cut. See, the valves, we have a seat angle, say like this or whatever. And I know it's like actually like this. Yeah. But anyway, as they wear out, they kind of curve and they're cupped because the seat itself wears and it's rounded and not flat anymore. So it's not two flat surfaces coming there. It's kind of rounded. So regardless, in either the valve job, you can't run it that way. But when it's rounded like that, I thought, well, that might increase flow. I haven't ever really tried to see if that does, because you can't run an engine that way. You got to have two flat surfaces, and that's how it seals. So I thought, well, I cut the valve job on the first one. I'm going to flow this other one that hasn't got a valve job done. And when I flowed it, I was like, huh. And it took me till the day before this video to realize, crap, I might have messed up on something, but also, wow, I have an idea. So let me get further into explaining it, because I know you're like, I am confused what you're saying. It will make sense in the video, I promise. Here we go.
Interesting thing right here. So this is a set of, I think these are 821s. Yeah, these are 821s that someone had sent in. They've been ported, but they wanted me to, he ported them. He wanted me to valve job them, service them, send them all that, and flow them. But just by chance, I'm getting ready to do the valve job, and I put my Sharpie mark. But then I happened to look, because I blasted these to clean them up. Do you see this? This is the seat right here that you're seeing. You see that there? See all these spots? That's chatter. So that's chatter from the factory. Because not all of them have it, obviously. That one's kind of dirty, but that one doesn't have it. That for sure does. That's a not sealing up thing. That's why it keeps hitting in different spots. So yeah, there was chatter in the seat, and they sent it that way. GM did. So, but anyway, we're gonna get this valve jobbed and flowed and stuff. Here's what the heads look like when the valve job's done. Now, this isn't my most aggressive valve job, just for the record, and it looks like, man, it took a lot of material, which this one is. This is my medium one. I've got one that's lighter, and I've got one that's more aggressive. The one that's more aggressive I usually use on all of my port stuff. And then the exhaust one is just a regular profile. I know it looks weird because before, whenever you saw them, you thought they were like a cast steel seat, but no, they're a copper alloy type of seat. But anyway, this is it. And you can tell, see how it leaves that ledge right below it? That's how much extra material it's removing compared to the other one. And this is a 5-angle valve job. It might be very hard to see, but there's one right there, 2, 3, that fourth one right there where the seat is. And then there's one that's right above it. I didn't drop it down too much because he actually already removed some of that. So that's there. And this is just a radius exhaust valve job. Now, I'm not going to blend this because I need to talk to him first to see if he wants me to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flow it exactly like it is. And we'll see what the flow differences was between this and what he ported. Just to show you that the grinding you did is great, but you gain more flow actually from just the valve job. Or hopefully close to it. We'll see when we test, but from all the testing I've done before, and I could eat my words here, usually the valve job's worth more than the grinding. So valve jobs first, then grinding. But let's see. Sorry, the iPhone decided to lock up for whatever reason. But anyway, I mean, here's the port work. You could tell, and I'm not doing my best on lighting on it. I'm not knocking him. But I could see right there and there that he didn't do a complete cleanup on that. There's spots in the port where I could totally see where the casting still is, especially on that side. See it right through there? So it's not like he just hogged the thing out. So I'm looking at trying to figure out how he even did it. And I was getting kind of frustrated. So I even found the guy that did it, and I said, how'd you do it, right? Like, I don't know how you got 278. So how'd you do it? He's like, I'm just a backyard guy. I just follow yours, Darren Morgan's principles. He even followed me back when I was on Yellow Bullet and war with Chad at the time. So he knew from all that, and he just followed along. So I was like, I can't believe that. So it was really, really great. The exhaust side 230s, though, and he made them way bigger than my exhaust ports. I mean, these things are pretty big. But anyway, I was like, that's outstanding. I just don't know how he did that. So then, you know, I did the valve job, and I'm like, I'm going to show you how much the valve job's worth. And part of me is like, there's no way this is going up. It's going to go down. And it did. So here's with the valve job. So no blending. This is just cut it just like you saw in the video. From 278 at 4 to 270. So lost 8 CFM. From 5, it went from 313 to 303. And by the way, these are still good numbers, but it's about in line. From 550, went from 326 to 319. 600 went from 337 to 337. But if you look, it gained a 10 CFM at 1 inch of valve lift, where you're like, nobody runs 1 inch in that. And this guy is truly not. But remember, this flow bench only flows at 28 inches of water. In an actual engine, it's pulling way more vacuum than this flow bench is. So the air speeds are much, much higher. And that's the reason why we flow at 1 inch, because that's closer, but still way far away from an actual live engine running at speed. So that's why I care about it. So the numbers I really care most about are 4, 6, and 1. Because 1 tells me how stable the port is if it's still climbing. So it looks really good. Now this is, but as you could tell, I was expecting to be like, see, look how much the valve job picks you up. Told you. Get a valve job done. It did, but it also lost. Remember, this is no blending, so there's no blending at all. However, on the exhaust side, this is more what I expected. So he did all that work to get all that, and then look at this. This is just valve job, no blending. 300 went from 152 to 159. 400, 186 to 200. 500, 209 to 215. I mean, it's up everywhere, okay? But definitely more in the lower lifts with no blending. So after I got done doing that, I called him up like, I need to talk to this porter. And that's when I told you, like he said, I just did basic things. And I was really, really stumped. Until this morning, what I had done was I did the blending. So let me show you the blending. This is the blending. Just used a burr and just blended that ridge out. That's all I did. Nothing on the exhaust because there's no ledge. There isn't. No need for it. So just to give you an idea, that's what it looks like. Nothing heavy. Didn't make the throat any larger. Well, actually, the valve job probably did when it cut. But nothing crazy. Just normal stuff. Even on the short side, nothing crazy. Just normal. And I put on the flow bench just like this, because this is actually one I did. And I was like, son of a gun. Now I know what I did, why that numbers was so good. It wasn't that I left off the spark plug, because I checked that, because I was like, 278, so good, let me check some things. Spark plug was still in it. What I left off was this. You're like, a wrench. This is the intake valve. This is the exhaust valve. The spring, I don't put a super heavy spring on it because then it'll deflect. So as you open with your valve opener, it actually deflects. So even though it says it's at 500 valve lift, you're actually at 480 because the spring pressure is actually causing this whole thing to move backwards and shift. So I use a lighter spring. I also put that on the exhaust. But the problem is when you kick on the intake, if you don't have see what I do is I put this wrench underneath the coils and put it up there so it's really, really, really firm. If you don't do that, it's a way flow bench numbers cheat up. So if you want to know how people cheat up their flow numbers, they look, I got the spark plug in and all this. If that spring on the exhaust is weak, what happens is you turn on your flow bench, it starts sucking open the exhaust. And it can only open maybe 20, 30 thou, and you're like, it doesn't matter.
it added like 10 CFM. In this case, it added quite a bit. It had to have. There's no way those numbers came from that. So, and both of these, by the way, I did the same thing. Because all I did was take it off, put the other head on that I valve jobbed, and just ran it, not even totally forgetting. You're like, how did you forget? Well, usually I use a 10 millimeter wrench, but I had to go put the battery on Bishop's car, and I took the 10 millimeter wrench. So since it wasn't here for me, you're like, oh, I left it off. Yeah, that's what it was. So I say all that to be like, crap, man, I just wasted that test, and I can't go back and redo it. But there's a point I'm going to get to. So now let's look at what the actual blending of the valve job did, because this is where it becomes more clear. This is the valve job blended, the third column. Oops, that didn't work. We'll try again. There we go. So now if you look at 400, went from 278 to 270 to 267. That's actually correct because it's not trying to suck through the intake. Because look at this. There's clues. See the 75, 75, 71? There's no way that should happen. It was sucking air open. It was sucking air. That made me so mad, and I just found it. But anyway, it went from, so you pretty much, these two numbers are garbage now to figure that out. But regardless, this is still sucking with air open, but look how much you gain. So, or lost, 269, 270, 267, 303 to 301. But look at this, 319 to 320, and this time I know it's right. It's still doing the same CFM here, but remember, this isn't pulling. But this is another dead giveaway that things are working better now. 346 from a 341. It's the highest it's ever been. 330, so it's low there, but better than there. But look at peak, 353. And it went 352 at 9, too. And that, by the way, is 12 CFM better than stock. So it was like, wow. However, that's more realistic of a number. Because I've seen that in several. Even I actually pulled up one of my Frankensteins, and he's just like 268. So that's only one CFM off. At 400, at least the head I had that I flowed. But anyway, that's just, dang it. I'm so mad at myself. And the thing is, I might even put the wrench in on this one, but there's no way it wasn't on this one. I don't think it is on either one of those. So I think it's wrong. But I know this one's right, and I wish I had spotted it. And I wish I had a camera set up in the shop so I could see if that's what happened. Because right now it's speculation. However, you're like, what's this got to do with anything besides you rambling on? This. It gave me an idea. So let me just explain this because he's okay with it and I think I'm going to try it. Let me explain. I want you guys to know this is the fourth time trying to record this segment. This iPhone update sucks balls. And if it sounds like I'm echoing, I'm not wearing my earbuds because they went dead. Because this is the fourth time to try this. So here we go. Let's get to it. So after doing all that stuff, you know, flowing the head like that, it left me with a question, a really interesting question. And that was probably the same one you're asking yourself right now when you're watching that video. Or not, maybe you weren't even asking, but it definitely caused something to ping pong around my head. And the question that I had was, and you have it, does low lift flow actually make more power than peak flow? Because people have asked that in my comments often. And in general, I always thought, well, you know, low lift flow makes more power. I mean, that's what I've been told, but I've never done a dyno test with it. So in a way, I've been parroting, I guess, stuff that other people have told me. So because that thought was in my head, I thought, man, I need to test that. And lucky for you, here's the plan I came up with because of this. So this customer here, these 821s that you saw in the video with the great low lift flow, he said, yeah, you could use them on the dyno. You could use them on your dyno test. It doesn't bother me one bit. And I thought, I have an LS 408 cubic inch engine that I use for dyno testing. That's the one we use for the cam challenge. We tested a whole bunch of different cylinder heads with it, including these 823s. I would like to test these heads on it. And the reason why is because I'm going to do a little comparison. So these are the stock 823 heads. I did a valve job on it and blended. When we used it in the earlier dyno test compared to a set of AFR LS3 Enforcer heads, and just to see what the difference is, we use them with the truck Norris camshaft, and it was down a little from the AFR LS3, but not a huge difference. When we tried the Texas Speed camshaft, the bigger one, I forgot about the map sensor on the ignition box, and the test wasn't fair. So unfortunately, we could never test it with the larger cam. Luckily, that all got worked out before we did any more of the other tests. But these have been sitting here. Now, a viewer, by the way, also brought these in for me to test. So that was cool. So what I thought was, what if there's a way where I could dyno test a head that has worse low lift flow versus one that has more low lift flow, and to see if it actually makes more power? So here's the plan I've came up with, because we're gonna hopefully get something solved. I'm gonna dyno those heads, these 821s that got great low lift flow. I'm gonna port the 823s. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, my 400 numbers on those just aren't as good whenever I port them. They're just not gonna match that, guaranteed. But from probably 600 up, it's gonna be much, much better. Now, our cams are only gonna be limited to a max of 660 lift. We're probably gonna try more than one camshaft, which we'll get to in a second. But anyway, I'm gonna port these, and we're gonna dyno test them with it. But I wanna see an even larger difference in the low lift flow. So here's another idea I have. One of the questions you guys have asked yourself is about back cuts. Please watch my other videos. I talk about back cuts quite a bit. Back cuts, typically, when you put them on a valve, it makes the low lift flow, the 400 number, go up. But it hurts the peak flow just a little bit. And I've tested this hundreds of times on the flow bench. You can back it up in every which way. Many different heads, not just one, many. So, but the interesting thing is, well, does that actually make more power? I know, I thought it. So what I'm gonna do with these 823s after I port them is I'm gonna use a valve that has no back cut. None. Then, after we dyno that, take it off, I'm gonna put in a valve that has a back cut. That should answer one, which makes more power, having a back cut or not having a back cut. But also, not having a back cut's really gonna hurt the 400 number. So we should see a bigger difference if the lower lift flow makes more of a difference. But I'm gonna make it even worse. What I'm gonna do on these 823 heads is I think on the intake valve job, I'm gonna put a 50-degree valve job. Most common valve jobs are 45. 50-degree I use for most of the race stuff. Typically, a 50-degree valve job will flow worse at 400 than at 45, the same at 500, and from 600 on, the 50-degree is better. I'm gonna put that on there. So that should give us even bigger difference at 400 valve lift. This should tell us if the low lift flow is more important than peak flow. Because here's the thing, these are probably gonna flow tremendous from 700 on, even though we're only gonna have a 660 lift cam at peak. That should tell us if it's worth something looking at those numbers on the flow bench, because maybe it will make more power. So we're gonna test that. Now you might say, wait a minute, have you done something kind of like that before? Kinda. I know a large majority of you didn't click on this video. I should say this. Most people don't click on this video right now that you're watching because they saw an LS head and they thought it's only about LSs. And the same thing happened with a big block Chevy if I have that on versus a small block Chevy, so on and so forth. But if you were to watch my videos, a lot of this knowledge transfers for different engine families. It's not just for LS, especially this back cut. One of the tests I had done was on the 496 big block Chevy. If you remember, I put a 50-degree valve job on that, and it murdered the 400, 500, and 600 number. And that cam only had 639 lift. It made more power. So, but there was a little things with that, like it did have a little bit different compression ratio after. So there might be some small stuff that might have changed that, so it can't give a direct comparison. This will be much better for that. So hopefully we can get an answer. Now, right now you're thinking, when are you even going to do this, man? You said you're going to do the small block Ford Cam Challenge. You got the small block Dyno Mule you got to do. What about this Hemi? I know there's a lot out there. And I know even now you're like, you haven't dynoed in forever. You did a ton in November, December, October. You haven't done anything. Here's the thing. My son's 18 and he's a senior. He's about to close this chapter of his life. And I'm trying to enjoy the end of this part of that chapter as much as possible. So he's in the swim and I want to be there for him as much as possible. His last swim meet's this weekend. And then he's free up till May. He didn't have to do anything. So I'm trying to be as involved as I can. I want to enjoy this time. So I also want to spend more time in the shop to make money for his stuff. So time is money, so I'd rather spend time with him than on the dyno. So there's that, but the plan is this summer. As best as I can, I'm going to make it happen this summer. So, yeah. So you're like, man, I'd really like to know what's going to happen with it. You're going to share the results. I promise you 100% because these came from viewers. All the data is going to be on YouTube. It's just going to be a matter of time for me to put it all together and put it on the video. After all, this is the 4th take on this video, particularly because the camera keeps acting up on the iPhone. Probably is doing it now, and all this is going to get recorded. But anyway, I'm going to offer people a chance to donate because some people just want to donate, feel like to help the cause, and it truly does. For those people, I'm just going to give you a Google Drive, and I'm going to throw all that information in there. Channel members, you're already going to have it thrown in there at the same time. So as I get done dynoing, the sheet prints off, I drop it in the Google Drive so you can see it right away. All that stuff will not be behind a paywall where you can't see it. When the video comes out, all that will be available for you to see. Promise. But if you just want to happen to see it earlier, if you want to support the cause, I'll put a link in the description so you can donate. Because after all, this is probably going to take about 3 days because I'm going to use at least 2 camshafts for each head. And the reason why, and part of this is because the camshaft challenge guys, many of them were nice enough to say, hey, just use my cam for testing later on. So luckily, I have multiple cams to choose from that I could test from. Because I know even now as I'm saying this, people have already commented probably some of the camshaft depends. And it may. So hopefully we'll get an answer with that. But that's 4 heads, because you look at the 821s, 823s, no back cut, 823 with a back cut. And then I forgot about this one to tell you. The AFR LS3 Enforcer head that's ported, I'm going to dyno test that one. All those together will be a session. That's going to take about 3 days with the cam changes and everything. It's about $3,000. I dyno at Dunsworth Machine Shop, and I would never ask him to do it for free. That's just being a dick. He's got bills to pay and stuff too. So I'm going to make it happen regardless. But if you would like to help me not spend so much money to where it just delays testing, feel free to donate. I also need head gaskets too, because I don't like to reuse head gaskets. They're MLS. If it's on the same day, I'll reuse them, but if it goes into another day, I'll always switch. Anyway, that's what's going on. Hopefully you made it through the end of the video because the more exciting stuff I think was actually at the end. But hopefully we'll have an answer about the low lift flow versus the peak flow when that's done. And luckily this guy sent it in for me to even think about doing this test and lets me test it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Remember, I don't port cast iron heads, and I know some of you are like, wait a minute, you said you were going to cover the ProMax Vortec head in this video. I know, but this stuck in my head because I was doing a valve job on Sunday. Yes, I work 7 days a week on these heads, and I was like, I need to do a video. But I will get your video in, and you'll get to see those. But I don't port cast iron heads. I'm no Superman. I did race Superboy. You guys take care.